Hello everybody, today I want to discuss the Immigration Summit Angela Merkel held on the 9th of March this week. She has presented an integration plan that I think is very far-reaching, and therefore I want to discuss this with you as well. Unfortunately, they have not really provided original documents to the public, neither there is video footage of the summit, nor is there the plan, the integration plan, written as a PDF document or as a website page. However, the Secretary for Integration, Mrs. Annette Widmann-Mauz, has put up a frequently asked question page with regards to the integration plan that's awaiting us. Additionally, there is a frequently asked question page from the official website of the federal government, Bundesregierung.de, which discusses the most frequently asked question about the integration summit in and of itself. So I will use those two documents to discuss the summit and the implications it has for our politics. So let's start with the plan in and of itself, or what the frequently asked questions about that plan supposedly are. So the first one is that who was a participant or who was a co-worker of this particular plan. And according to the web page of Annette Widmann-Mauz, the Secretary for Integration, they were 300 people, 75 of which are NGOs with a migration background, migration lobby NGOs, I would say. They call it migration organizations, so I assume it's these kind of pressure groups that push for ever more immigration and for Islam, etc., etc. These 300 participants, 75 being migrant organizations, they are explained or defined as it is once 11 federal ministries. For example, they are giving the examples: the Federal Ministry for the Interior, Building and Home, the Foreign Ministry, the Ministry for Economics and Energy, the Ministry for Labor and Social Affairs, the Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture, the Federal Ministry for Family, Seniors, Women and the Youth, the Federal Ministry for Health, the Federal Ministry for Education and Research, and the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, so it's the Foreign Aid Ministry. And there's also mentioned, in addition to these federal offices, a lot of commissioners, sinecure officers for the purpose of virtue signaling of the government, I would say. There are also the actors civil society, which is an umbrella term for basically everybody who is not a corporation or an official government entity. A lot of those actually receive money from the state, and sometimes it's not quite clear if they are separate from the government. So, for example, trade unionists trade unions would be civil society in this definition. There is the NGOs, not just the migrant NGOs, but all NGOs, the charities, the churches. In Germany, we have the situation that everybody believes we are a secular country because people don't ever go to church. It's not a very religious country. However, the institutional power of the church is enormous, and that is they actually are part of the state, but legally that's not how it is defined, and a lot of people are therefore confused of the link between the church and the state. And the trick the lawyers and our jurisprudence and so on have for manipulating the public into believing that we are a secular state is that there's an umbrella term, an umbrella category for both state organizations and church organizations, and that is called the Corporation of Public Law, Körperschaft des öffentlichen Rechts, Corporation of Public Law. So a Corporation of Public Law, Körperschaft des öffentlichen Rechts, is both a local government, the state, the office around the corner, the post office, that's not privatized, but an office, and the federal government, it's all in one basket, and also it's then everything that belongs to the church, the Lutheran Church in itself, the Catholic Church in and of itself, and there are also some Islam groups, and there are some oddballs like the Red Cross is also under this umbrella. So it gives the impression that they are just under a common roof, but they do not belong together. But in reality, of course, the privileges that are designed for the state, or the boundaries, we don't actually have many boundaries to say. That's the construction error we have in our constitution. But conceptually, the boundaries and privileges of the state that were designed for the state are extended to the churches, and as such, we are not a secular society. So this was a long explanation for this terminology, civil society. I think it's very relevant because a lot of the pressure groups behind the migration movement are described as civil society, and I think that's a propaganda trick because everybody thinks civil society is just you and me, it's just everybody, your ordinary citizen and so on, but they don't actually mean the citizenry. There's also a separate word for it, Bürgerschaft, or Bürgertum. There are separate words to describe your ordinary citizen. They do not mean your ordinary citizen, they mean people that are already organized into pressure groups for one reason or the other. Then they also name as participants the international organizations, and I assume they mean NGOs. They claim science participated, which doesn't make sense because science is a concept and not an organization. They claim that the economy participated, which again is a concept, not an organization. I assume they mean corporations. They say that media was participating. Usually they deny that there is a collusion between our media outfits and the government, but here they say it blatantly that there is one. And then there is the participation of sports and culture organizations, trade unionists, and charities. The second question is, why do we actually need a national integration plan? And there's a lot of yada yada. And there's one phrase that I find very weird, and I think it's worth exploring, and that is, we are in a country of immigration, and the federal government has already affirmed this in the specialist worker immigration law. The specialist worker immigration law came into force on the 1st of March, and it basically allows almost everybody to come into the country. It is that you just need a recognized qualification, professional qualification. And I've looked up, it doesn't actually entail a university degree or something that is terribly needed. They actually downgraded it to almost every office job or every job that can't be done by a teenager. It's literally, you just need an apprenticeship. Maybe you have had an apprenticeship at international corporation, a big corporation, then you're already qualified as a specialist. And I also want to say that this word Fachkraft, specialist worker, is very misleading because Fach means somebody you look up to, is usually seen as an expert. You know this if you are from a music background and you are into singing, that there are these different Fach levels of your voice. So you're either an alt or a soprano, or you are a baritone or something else. This is usually called a Fach. Some people pronounce it Fach. Don't do it. It's Fach. So in music, Fach means it's the specialization of your voice. And likewise in the original German, where the word comes from, Fach is the specialization of a professional. So people expect when they hear a special force, an elite group to come, when in reality it's just everybody who has some professional background that's beyond what a teenager can do. The other requirements for immigration according to this Fachkräfte Einwanderungsgesetz are that you must be able to converse in German on a B1 level. That is literally just being able to understand some basic, easy, slow speech. Like, you know, if you go into a language learning class as an adult to prepare yourself for holidays. That's basically the result you get out of it. If you are ambitious about it, then you can converse a bit and go to the supermarket. This is B1, and this is all you really need. And additionally, you need a health insurance, and you have to have a bank account to prove that you cover the cost for the time of your job search. So you don't even have to have the agreement of any corporation or any business to hire you. You can search for your job as long as you provide evidence that you have the means. Additionally, you are banned from having access from the welfare system for the time of your job search. So if you have a job already and you fall out of the workforce for whatever reason, you are eligible to the welfare, and as well if you are sick, you are eligible, just not for the time of your job search, these few weeks that you may stay. Then you have to provide the financial resources on your own. That's the only barrier we have. And you will see later that they are actively educating people, and they begin increasingly to educate people all around the world that it is easy to come here, and that this is an ambition of the government. It's not just something some activist groups do, it's an ambition of the government to tell people how easy it is to come into this country. Next question, what is the target group? And as you would expect, it is the people who come here. They completely ignore people who are already here, who have also an interest in the integration. Those interests are barely touched at all. I think Angela Merkel mentioned it in her press conference very shortly, that we also don't really want our heads to be chopped off, but that is not the emphasis of it at all. It is targeted towards people who have immigrated or who wish to immigrate. What are the goals of the integration plan? According to the frequently asked questions page of our Secretary for Integration, it is about the concentration of existing integration efforts, and it is about the improvement of the life or living conditions of the people who immigrated or have a history of immigration, and to enable their equal rights participation. That's actually the terminology, equal rights participation. And I have a hard time actually to understand and to decipher political speech because it's so dishonest. So I mean, rights are of course equal, the laws, the rules shall be applied equally, and yet they just use this word equal rights as an adjective, a composed adjective, to mean something that actually goes beyond the legal, something that goes beyond, that the rules count for everybody in the same way. We also establish 24 topic forums, theme forums, under the guidance of the federal ministries, in coordination with the states, the local communities, and non-state actors. So again, this is probably the NGOs, maybe the churches, this concentration of power is supposed to work towards those stated goals of basically collecting and concentrating the powers of already associated with this effort, with this integration effort, in fewer hands. And I think really what we see here is a lot is what used to be called Gleichschaltung under the Hitler regime, that more and more powers are taken from the local levels, the state levels, and are moved towards the federal government, which then becomes less federal and just becomes authoritarian. Next question is, how does the integration plan address the fight against racism? Yes, this is actually, this is the first thing that really comes up outside of this vague improving the life situation, blah blah blah. The first thing we are supposed to be concerned about when it comes to mass immigration is of course racism. It's not that you can ask immigrants of doing anything. No, of course it is the population of the recipient countries that have to change everything and have to wash their tongues, etc., etc. The next question is about the goals of phase 1, which is a bit peculiar because the following question will be about what the phases are. But anyway, so they start with phase 1, and it says here that it is about finding or acquiring specialist forces, these Fachkräfte, specialist professionals for Germany in the worldwide labor market. So we get the most qualified specialist forces and become an attractive country of immigration. I think the ultimate political cultural background of this is that this is the reaction of total idiot leftists to the discussion of lower taxes, etc., etc. We always used to say, if you behave shitty, people will go somewhere else, and you want good people who have high income, etc., to be in their country. Okay, you don't want to push and force people out of their country who are productive, so don't tax them too high. This was coming from a conservative libertarian side. So that is their reaction now to us telling them that you cannot have so bad politics, that you have to actually literally build a wall around your countries, like for example in North Korea, like for example in East Germany, to keep people in. Okay, this was they don't even consider improving their politics. They just consider locking people up or drawing people in. So now let's get to the phases. The next question is phrased as how does the procedure of the national action plan work out? And there are 5 phases. The first being named, because I've already explained it. The first being named before immigration, guiding, steering expectations, give orientation. So, well, it is about really advocating all over the world so that people come into the country to increase the number of immigrants. That's phase 1. Phase 2, first integration, or easing the arrival and proliferate values. This is not specified anywhere in this writing, and so far I never hear really much about our values when our politicians talk. When our elites talk about integration, the only things we hear all the time is learn the language and get a job at McDonald's, for example. It isn't even relevant what kind of job. It's just the success is just they clean something, they work something, they are cutting the shrubs, whatever they do. That is always the effort, and there is no discussion, there's nothing really in their integration efforts or even in the conversation about what integration should look like that kind of makes good citizens out of the immigrants, that trains them to be Democrats, not in the American sense, but Democrats in the sense that they want to limit the government, they want to limit the power of the power hungry. They rather want the opposite. They want to bring in people from countries where they have allowed power-hungry people to take ever more control, and they want those same lame-ass don't complain people here as well. That's why they need mass immigration. I think that's the main purpose. They want to abolish democracy, and they can achieve this by bringing in people who have never safeguarded freedom, who have never done anything to achieve democracy. Phase 3 is named making them part of the chain, or link them up, or Eingliederung, make them a link of the chain, enable participation, demand and advance, or demand and support. Demand from them and support them. That's what it means. Phase number 4 is growing together, constructing diversity, ensuring unity. Constructing diversity, ensuring unity. Phase 5, cohesion. Strengthen cohesion and construct, envision future. Each of those phases are supposed to encompass 4 or 5 theme forums or working groups, and they are supposed to create 24 core initiatives per phase, which will result in 120 specific measurements for integration. The next question is, which role do the migration organizations play? And of course they are supposed to attend all of those 24 theme forums or working groups and give the perspective of the immigrants. And this is quite ludicrous because already 1 in 4 Germans have a younger migration background. That means their parents or grandparents come from Africa, from Asia, God knows what places, and therefore they can already, through their ordinary election procedures, through conversations, etc., they can speak for their own interests. They don't have to be divided up by, race lines, migration status lines, etc. It does not really matter. They don't need these representatives, these pseudo-representatives of the migration group. And as you can hear from my accent, I have migrated myself, okay? I am actually a migrant myself, and I don't feel represented by these migration organizations at all, to say the least. The next question is, what is the declaration of the federal government? And I think I skipped that because the overall measurements speak for themselves. What is the next question would be, what is the integration summit of the chancellor, and who took part? And it says it is a series of summits that have started already in 2006, and again there are these 120 representatives of the groups that I've already mentioned under the first question. That's actually a repetition of the first question. I'm stupid. So I want to address now the frequently asked question page of the federal government with regards to the integration summit in and of itself, which is published on the federal government's website. The previous document was, as I've already noted, published by the Secretary for Integration. The first question is, what happened on the 13th Integration Summit? And it gives a number of quotes. For example, there is one by Annette Widmann-Mauz, which says, if Germany wants to remain an economically strong country, strong and modern country for immigration, we must take care that everybody can contribute his skills and abilities. What I think is quite interesting here is that she is misrepresented as a minister. She is not a cabinet member. This is most certainly false, but I think it appears twice in that document, and I think they have already registered in their heads that they want to expand this anti-racism. Everybody must come into a federal ministry. What is also interesting is that our federal minister for family, Franziska Giffey, has spoken about a future law that she will call the Defensive Democracy Promotion Law. It is supposed to strengthen her project Democracy, Living Democracy, Demokratie, leben. Demokratie, leben, or Living Democracy, is a slush fund that is already funded with around 200 million euro every year, and it is now possibly being strengthened with an upcoming law, and the title is already quite alarming because defensive democracy is the abolition of democracy in the name of democracy. That's actually the definition of it. As mad as it sounds, it is mad. Behind that stands the myth that the Weimar Republic was this perfect paradise where everybody safeguarded individual rights, the limits of the government, etc. They did not have emergency rule, etc., an arbitrary rule. And then Hitler came, he used the democratic structures, he could rely on the the democratic makeup of the people's minds. He was just using this for his own interest, and then he established a dictatorship, a full-fledged dictatorship. Of course, the reality was far different, but the myth that there was this perfect democracy and that had failed. This is instrumental for the post-war mindset, because there is a skepticism towards democracy that is fueled with this myth. In reality, of course, the Weimar Republic was far from a functioning democracy. It was constantly ruled with emergency rules, and it was arbitrary. It had a lot of violence, street violence going on. Freedom of speech was not guaranteed. Freedom of assembly was not guaranteed. Nothing was actually guaranteed and safeguarded. People did not protect the values that make up a democracy at all. And when Hitler took power, things did not actually change so much for the larger public. It changed a lot, of course, for Jews, for homosexuals, for Sinti and Roma, etc., etc. But for the wider public, it was just, okay, the chaos continues. This is the reality. The reality is not that there was a pristine, perfect democracy that allowed Hitler to take power and then everything came down. And therefore, because they have the wrong history, they have learned the wrong lesson, which is that you have to occasionally and arbitrarily and all the time abolish the principles of democracy, sometimes here, sometimes that, use authoritarian tools against this group and against that group, in order to protect democracy. So they have developed the concept of a defensive democracy, which means you have to occasionally abolish democracy in order to keep democracy. The next question is which specific measurements and results were in the focus of the 13th Integration Summit. And it just really says that we are now in the phase 4 and 5, which is growing together and cohesion. And this is now where the anti-racism thing of course comes to the front. And the next question is quite interesting, because now it goes into the details of phase 4, which is quite shocking. And it speaks about diversity in club culture. Like, for example, they had brought into the summit the German Olympic Sports Association, Deutscher Olympischer Sportbund, and they want to create a leadership program for volunteers who want to try to be referees in a sports competition or whatever their voluntary work looks like. I don't know really this organization, and they want to use a leadership program. So the idea is that they are promoting managerial knowledge to immigrants first. And what upsets me about it is that it becomes so totalitarian that you cannot really escape anything anymore. Your soccer club, as well as your your table tennis club, wherever you go, you're constantly confronted with, we pick some black person and teach him that he's going to be the next big manager, and so on. And all these leadership skills, I'm also very, very skeptical about these life coach people and so on, who pretend they know how to lead others. They are hardly ever actual leaders. A leader, also a successful business leader, is somebody who does something. Okay, his ambition is not to have people under him. His ambition is to do something, to get a job done, and for that he hires people, helping hands. Okay, this is a leader. Their idea of leader is, okay, there is already a standing organization, and they just want to replace somebody who may have been a leader in the past. Maybe he's retiring, maybe he's bullied out of his job, and they replace this position with somebody else who has just some, cattle sweet talk, soft skills under his belt. And these soft skills are supposed to be promoted by sports groups, so you cannot even go to sports groups without being talked into hierarchy, how a corporation is supposed to be led. Then they want to expand a program that is running in the state of Saarland, Saarland, and it is designed to promote diversity across the health sector. It's called Inge, and Inge is supposed to be extended to all states. The healthcare sector is in the hands of the churches, and as I've explained already, the churches are actually a part of the state here, but nobody admits it, and the legal system is set up to obfuscate that fact. And the healthcare sector is a great example for this, because it is under the umbrella, mostly under the umbrella of the churches, and the hospitals, the retirement homes, etc., they are usually funded by the communities, the local communities, sometimes the state. It always comes from the government, it comes from taxpayer money. They are funded by the state, but the bishops come to decide who is hired, who is fired, and until very recently they could, for example, fire somebody for being a homosexual, etc. So the power is with the churches, but the payment, of course, comes from the taxpayer. And this kind of arrangement is typical for the secularism that many believe we have in Germany. And then they want to fight hate, particular hate on the internet, that is me, with the no hate speech movement. The no hate speech movement is an organization designed by the Council of Europe. That is not the EU. It may be even your place, so you may take care that a lot of the things that have already come to our place may come to yours. So this no hate speech movement says on its website that they want, or on the website of the Council of Europe rather, that they want to fight hate speech by speaking about human rights and teaching people about human rights. And you think, oh wait, the only human right that actually has something to do with speech is freedom of speech. So why do we need a no hate speech movement to protect our human rights to free speech? On their German language side, they give already an example how this looks like, this educating people about human rights. And they say here that freedom of opinion is not the freedom to say what you want. Freedom of opinion is not an absolute right. It is limited by the dignity of a person. So it is not limited by not disclosing private information, by not disclosing military information, by keeping secrets. It's also not limited by the defamation concept. Like, for example, you cannot say that somebody is a pedophile. Of course, if you make clear that you are speculating, then you must also be able to express that, because you have to protect children, right? You have to say, I think it could be wrong, but I think that A has a problem, and therefore if you have your children around this person, you should always have a second adult in the room, blah blah blah. So you have to be able, and this belongs to opinion again, to express your speculation, but you cannot say A is a pedophile, because this is harmful to the person, and therefore this is verboten. But their limit is dignity. Which is a very fuzzy concept, so you can't just say, shut up, my dignity says ouch, and therefore you are no longer allowed to speak. That's the standard they want to establish. Everybody can just claim, ouch, ouch, my dignity, and therefore you can be shut up. So according to the Council of Europe and a lot of our elites and their education, human rights are just no speech. Democracy is just defensive democracy. War is peace. Freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, up is down, down is up, no is yes, yes is no, unless of course you're a flirting guy in Sweden, then no is no. That German website also says who is financing this no speech movement, and of course it is my favorite newspaper site, the far left newspaper site, but also the formerly conservative newspaper FAZ, or rather their respective foundations, charities, which is Zeitstiftung and Fazit-Stiftung. Then there are the new German media makers, Neue Deutsche Medienmacher, I will come to them in a moment. Demokratie, leben, that is the family ministry flush fund, living democracy, as well as the family ministry named separately from that. I also want to promote the Neue Deutsche Medienmacher, that's this new German media makers, a migrant lobby group, and that's quite interesting what they say here. They want to promote with the cooperation of this lobby group. They want to promote media people, journalists of color. If a government wishes to promote individual journalists, then the journalists are no longer journalists, they are just speakers for the government. And what's quite interesting is that this group, the Neue Deutsche Medienmacher, do actually receive a lot of state funding. And the Neue Deutsche Medienmacher, the new German media makers, receive a lot of money. The Chancellor's Office gave in 2021 12,152 euro. The Family Ministry an additional 191,896 euro. The Minister of the Interior gave 89,882, and additionally a subdivision of that same ministry, the Federal Center for Political Education, gave 70,199 euro. That's a small number compared to, of course, the Chancellor's Office is 1 million, blah blah. And this is the funding of 2020 alone. Okay, of 2020 alone. They receive a lot of funding, and they are supposed to pick and promote journalists of the government's liking. Okay, so now let's come to the next question, next phase. That's what is in phase 5, and it says there that more people should become citizens. It says there straight up that more people should become citizens. No explanation outside of what I would give as the explanation is that they want more people to be citizens who don't care about democracy, who will relinquish all the powers to the most powerful power conglomerate, and they want to eliminate the limits of the state, and therefore they want to change the electorate. That's my explanation for it. But there's absolutely nothing in it for the wider public. They just say we want more people to become citizens. And for that they want to put up an online tool which shall ease the quick checks for applications. They want more diversity in the public sector, which means, and we've already seen some movement in Berlin, in the city of Berlin, and the city-state of Berlin, that asks for a diversity, how's it called, affirmative action program in the public sector. So they want to raise people with migration background in higher positions. They've also found 3,800 private companies and institutions that have in total 14 million workers or employees under them, and who have signed the Charter for Diversity. And I really wonder, why would people be ambitious? Why would young people even become ambitious anymore if all that's waiting for them is punishment? Because once they have a good knowledge, once they have a strong education, they will be working for people who are promoted on irrelevant characteristics, who are less educated, who are less informed about the things they are supposed to do, and who will make a lot of mistakes. And this will cause a lot of frustration. It will make the entire institutions and corporations go wayside, and we will see the decline of our economy and our freedom as a result of it. The patronage of the Charter is Angela Merkel, and it is quite striking that they demand, I think 250 euros it was, for an application, and they have a section of the website that is only accessible to members. I think it reeks of corruption. I have no evidence. Again, here this is the defamation free speech line. I have no evidence. I have to qualify. I have no evidence. But if there's something that has no obvious purpose, that is very vaguely phrased, has a lot of high profile people in it, and they are somehow collecting money, but it's not quite clear from what to where the flow goes. Chances are high that we are actually talking about possibly a criminal organization. But I don't know, okay, I'm just saying this is the fine line between defamation, if I say this is criminal, that would be defamation, but I'm not defaming them, I'm just saying it looks like it. So it's my opinion. It can be very different, they can be the most honest people on earth, I don't know. There are some more questions, but I think they are ultimately less interesting than what I've already covered, and it's a long video already. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.